Well, welcome this afternoon to everybody. I would like to be one of many people, I'm sure, who will welcome you back to Penn Law School. My name is Christopher Yoo. I'm on the law faculty here. And it is my distinct pleasure to host an event on a subject that we all, well, so many of us love dearly, and that would be baseball. It's hard to imagine something better. It's perfect weather. I can see that the dean has more pull than I thought to be able to work at such a beautiful day for today's reunion. We have two wonderful guests today, both of whom are distinguished alumni of this law school. On my right is Marvin Goldklang, who is a graduate both of Wharton and the law school, and LLM for NYU. One of the lesser known things about Marv is that he was, while at Penn, a pitcher. And he claims to hold the distinction of hitting, it says on his bio, 4 batters in a single inning, which he believes to be a record.
In a row.
And a little dick. It doesn't say in his public stuff, he says it happened on 4 consecutive pitches. I bet he couldn't do that again if he tried. He then did military service with the 11th Special Forces Group, became a partner at Cahill Gordon, senior executive vice president at the New York Stock Exchange, where he helped develop its leveraged buyout and asset management divisions, established his own merchant bank and private investment firm, and is now the chairman of the Goldklang Group, which owns several minor league franchises, oversees the marketing for several others. He's a minority owner of the New York Yankees, still on the executive committee of...
Thank you.
Always gets a response one way or the other. And I believe is still on the executive committee of the Israel Baseball League, if that's correct, and is a member of the South Atlantic League Hall of Fame. But most importantly, courtesy of the alumni office, has shown here in his tie-dyed splendor with a bat in hand, showing his former prowess as a player, and for that, Penn is truly grateful. We also have with us Ed Weiss, whose connection with baseball is apparently a little league and baseball softball coach for his children. In his spare time, he's general counsel of the Fenway Sports Group, the parent company of the Boston Red Sox, the New England Sports Network, Fenway Sports Management, and the Liverpool Soccer Club, one of the new things. A lifelong Red Sox fan living out his dream. A graduate of the law school where he was also going to get a response, especially in Phillies territory. So, graduate of the law school, is managing editor of the Law Review, law clerk to Judge Jay Waldman here in town, a member of Cravath, Splain and Moore, eventually became senior vice president and deputy general counsel at Time Warner, and was now working as part of the Red Sox group. The Fenway Sports Group has been instrumental in bringing the Liverpool sports soccer team in this fold. And to appropriately embarrass Ed, this is what part of the job description he was not told about before he joined the Fenway Sports Group. If you can't read the caption, it says, news photographers, behind the scenes of the Liverpool sale, news photographers were eager to get a shot of Henry as he arrived at the London law offices to finalize the deal to buy Liverpool. Ed Weiss, the general counsel for the Red Sox and NESV, sets a block for him to slip into the building, showing his sports bona fides in the process. So
I got hired, girth.
There you go. I don't know if they made that clear with you during the interview process, but I'm sure John Henry was very fortunate to have him. Apropos the celebratory nature of the event, we will start with a brief video showing once again what baseball is all about. Is this sound?
Let's go. Let's go to work. Come on. Never was a time that I'm going to try to hit a home run. It's sure going to be the day for you boys.
What an opening act, huh? I think we've got a leading man and many of them. I think we've got a leading man and many of them.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rickey. I'm certainly delighted with my contract.
And he's done it! It's a Rocky Mountain High and a no-hitter! He has done it! He has done it! A walk-off home run!
That is the stuff that Hollywood is made out of.
That's right, Mom. I love you, baby. He's the new all-time hip king. Who wrote this script? This is the biggest moment of his fabulous career.
Oh my goodness, what a moment.
Grandes Slam, Adrián González. Welcome to the show. Money made just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch which must have been an optical illusion.
He's gone.
Go, 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 go.
So he's got it. He's got it. I'm the greatest of all time. The greatest of all time.
The life I'm living now, I know that there's no.
And look who's coming up.
Shake them dice and roll them.
You talk about a roll of the dice. This is it. This is it.
He's sitting on 7-14. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. There's a new home run champion of all time.
Touch them all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.
This is one of the all-time great moments. A bouncer in time. Yogi Berra runs out there. He leaps.
Remarkable riot is a team baseball immortality.
Gotta get this one tonight.
Crazy things happen in the full moon.
A perfect game.
El Presidente.
Has painted an absolute masterpiece.
Bring to the plate.
He sends it all now with the most dramatic of flourishes.
She is gone.
I don't believe what I just saw.
Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Something had to happen.
And let the party begin. And for the first time since 1954, the Giants are world champions.
Well, if that will get you in the mood, I don't know what will. So let's start talking about what we would like to start talking about. Is I'd like to start with Ed. One of the big mysteries is what are the economics of baseball? How does this business work?
So it's probably a good topic since I don't think either Marv or I practice a lot of law anymore, but kind of much more on the business side. And really when I think about baseball, and by the way, we'd welcome your questions because I think it's probably easy for us to respond to things that you're interested in. But baseball, at least at the major league level, is really two different businesses. There's the central businesses, which are really run by Major League Baseball itself out of New York City, overseen by the commissioner. And those are things like the national television rights agreements, the MLB network would be part of the national business, an entity called Major League Baseball Advanced Media, which is basically the digital rights operations of Major League Baseball, which is run out of the Chelsea market area in Manhattan. And Major League Baseball Properties, which is the arm of Central Baseball that handles all the merchandising rights. So every time you go and buy a hat or a Phillies jersey, that is actually being sold to you by a licensee of Central Major League Baseball. And even though my colleague here for the Yankees and myself, the Red Sox, and the Phillies probably account for the vast majority of merchandising sales, that is all split 1/30 by Central Baseball. That's the way that works. And the second business is what I'll call the local business. That's the business that the clubs themselves oversee. In our case, would be the ticketing business, so attendance at the games, the parking, the concessions, the local television rights, the local radio rights. That's kind of the difference. And depending on where you sit in Major League Baseball, what kind of market you are, or what kind of team you are, the centralized revenues could be, for some smaller teams, could be as much as 60 to 70% of their overall profile, whereas for teams like the Yankees and the Red Sox, it's significant, but it's a much more de minimis part of our overall profile.
How about on the minor league level, Marv?
Well, but minor league baseball is not a mega business, but it's a fairly significant business. Just as an example, average minor league baseball franchises today, average values, are actually greater than what the ownership group I'm a part of paid for the New York Yankees in 1970s. We play in ballparks that in today's dollars cost $30 to $40 million to build. And I think that the last time I looked, aggregate attendance at minor league baseball games was running roughly 60% of total Major League Baseball attendance. So it's not a mega business, but it's a real business. The economic model of minor league baseball, we could talk a little bit, if you'd like, Professor, about the significance of the antitrust exemption at the minor league level, but skipping over that for the moment, in terms of the economic model, it is predicated largely on the Professional Baseball Agreement of 1990, which is the master agreement between Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, under which major league teams, in exchange for a percentage of minor league ticket revenues that range in the 6 to 7% of gross ticket revenue area, agree to provide and pay for players, managers, coaches, trainers, workers' compensation, insurance, and so forth. On the other side of the ledger, the minor league teams provide for all other team and game related items: uniforms, travel, umpires, bats, balls, equipment, and so forth. In terms of the minor leagues, the revenue mix from a definitional category standpoint is similar to that at the major league level, but it differs. It differs significantly, principally in relation to media rights. In terms of our teams, and over the last 25 years, we've probably been, if not the largest, one of the largest owner-operators of minor league baseball teams at every classification level: AAA, AA, high A, low A, on down. The revenue mix, there are three principal categories. You have ticket sales, you have advertising and promotional sponsorships, and you have concessions, principally food and beverage concessions. Within our experience, each accounts for roughly 30% of the gross revenue mix, with the balance being represented by non-traditional sources such as stadium rentals, concerts, and the like. The one big difference, and when we get to a discussion of digital rights, this will become more apparent, is in the area of media rights. Minor league baseball owners sell a different product than major league owners do. Major league owners are selling principally the baseball game between the lines. At the minor league level, the product is really an entertainment product wrapped around a baseball game. What we're selling is the atmosphere in the ballpark. As a result, people who are looking to connect to minor league baseball, when you're thinking in terms of watching games on television, it's very, very difficult to capture the essence of the experience of attending a minor league baseball game on television. So for that reason, media rights at the minor league level are, I won't say insignificant, but they don't remotely approach in terms of relative significance what they are at the major league level.
One of the things that's in the news these days is the current ongoing lockout of the NFL players. And this is clearly an issue that's plagued every sport, including baseballs. How closely are you following it? What do you think the implications are for your teams and your ownership groups? And do you have any handicapping on what the future might hold?
Yeah, I follow it very closely, and I should say that MLB, which is really the agent of 30 major league owners for purposes of the new collective bargaining agreement that will have to be negotiated in baseball, clearly is following it very closely. And there's a real advantage I think, as a league to being third in line, because we are behind the NFL and behind the NBA as to when our CBA expires. And I think that's a good thing, because right now I'd say the lesson is don't get your ass kicked like the NFL owners. But you know, it's on appeal at the 8th Circuit, but I think I'm a big believer in litigation of momentum, and that when you lose a lot, it affects things, and it clearly, I think, is affecting. The PR war had been fairly even for a while, and I don't believe that it's fairly even anymore. And I believe that the players' case with respect to the television rights agreement, so I don't know how closely, you know, all of you have been following, but there's basically been two significant rulings against the owners. The first was that the way that the league had negotiated its television rights extension, which had involved essentially a lot of money that would have had to be paid regardless of whether there had been a strike, so that the owners were essentially creating a rainy day fund in the event of a lockout that they were not going to share with the players. And that was held by the NFL owners' sort of nemesis, Judge Doty in Minnesota, to be not a negotiation that was conducted consistent with their fiduciary duties to the players to maximize revenues. That was a very significant loss. The damages that are occasioned by that have not been decided, but the players have filed things with respect to that. And I actually just heard the players' union leader this morning on the radio, and he was talking about evidence that they have, which are emails which indicated that it had been the owner's specific plan to do this, and that they have emails of this, and to basically leverage the players into a bad deal. So that was bad, and then they got before a new judge with respect to whether the lockout should be enjoined, and in an 89-page ruling, which it took me many days to get up the courage to read, that was also held to be you know, frankly, a very tough ruling against the owners. So while the 8th Circuit, I think the NFL owners have basically put their basket that the 8th Circuit will be a place that is more hospitable to them, but I'm concerned that you lose a lot, and you lose a lot of momentum, and it runs away from you.
Oh, for those of you who don't know, one of the things that's interesting is the first ruling on the TV rights was originally adjudicated by an arbitrator named Steve Burbank, who's on our faculty, who held in favor of the owners, only to see that reversed. And I think just earlier, before I came up, the players have officially asked for damages of $700 million. So that's the number that would
plus interest.
Plus interest. So how closely are you following it, Marv?
Well, in terms of at least the narrow category of minor league baseball, we have the advantage of having not as yet been noticed by the Major League Baseball Players Association. Minor league baseball players are not unionized. And as a result, which actually is a factor that has proven to be significant in terms of the development of the minor league system, because the so-called reserve clause is still in full bloom at the minor league level, under which teams can maintain contractual control over baseball players for periods of up to 4 to 6 years. They're not unionized. The umpires, interestingly, which are a responsibility of the minor leagues, don't ask me why, are unionized. And we do have some collective bargaining issues there, but in terms of the player side, it is non-existent. In terms of my general observation, looking at the situation with Major League Baseball, the NFL, and also the NBA, where you have some potential lockout circumstances coming down the pike. My own impression, and Ed, you may agree or disagree with this, is that so much of the dynamic depends on interpersonal relationships between the people who negotiate on each side. I know Michael Winger a little. I did not know Donald Fear very much. But my sense is just taking a look at the individuals who are likely to be the principal negotiators, you're much more likely to have to be able to come to terms on some reasonable and reasonably prompt basis in baseball than is the case in football and basketball.
So you have the dynamic of being third. You also have a commissioner who's clearly been troubled by labor unrest before and has had baseball on a good path. And depending on where he is in his tenure, would clearly like to keep things sort of rolling along. But I think baseball has, and it's an issue that's affecting all three of the sports, all four of the sports, frankly, what I'll call big market, little market issues. This really hasn't gotten a lot of attention in the NFL because it's been mostly posited as the players against the owners. But really, I think lingering even in the NFL dispute is owners versus owners. And it clearly is an issue in baseball. Baseball has and we both have a perspective as large market clubs, so I will just say baseball has...
One area where the Yankees and the Red Sox agree.
Baseball has solved the problem by basically taxing revenue, so to the extent that there is a significant imbalance in local revenues between the Yankees and the Red Sox, the Royals, the Pirates, and many other clubs like that are recipients of substantial amounts of transfers of revenues. And I think from the players' perspective, this has been a very good system because they assumed the proceeds would be used on payrolls. But unfortunately, the language tying the use of it by the Pirates, the Marlins, these teams to payrolls is weak. And some owners in baseball have used it as simply a transfer of revenues and profits rather than using it on payroll. So I think one of the difficult issues in baseball, although the other two leagues will confront it first, and frankly the NBA probably has the biggest disparity between large markets and small markets. A lot of it has to do with television rights, but that will be a significant issue, and an issue where clubs like the Yankees and the Red Sox believe that in the interest of competitive balance, we can accept transfers, but we need to see that the dollars that are being transferred are being translated into improved performance on the field by the teams that go.
Yeah, well, I mean, without violating confidences, I mean, the system that's in effect can actually produce a situation in which teams such as the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Phillies, some of the other so-called big market teams can actually lose money in a given year with teams such as the Pirates and the Marlins and the Kansas City Royals making money.
And just one last point on this, without belaboring it, there are all of this transfer idea has been competitive in the name of competitive balance. But if there were more direct ways, it's a very indirect taxation way to achieve what could otherwise be achieved directly. For example, what I would call on-field measures. I think it is likely that in this collective bargaining agreement, and again, I'm not at the table, so I'm just giving you a 20,000 foot view here, that there will be other reforms that will be adopted, such as on the draft, how the draft will work, such as including international player signings in a draft process. There almost assuredly will be an extra wild card that will be included as a result of this CBA. All of those things are designed to give the smaller market clubs more direct ways to achieve competitive balance, and so the thought would be if that can be so, then perhaps the burdens of the revenue sharing could be reduced.
It occurs to me there's probably something else you could agree on, which is disliking the Tampa Bay Rays, but that's another thing that's in the news right now.
One of our minor league teams is actually affiliated.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Marv.
So I don't like them at the major league level, but...
Well, but it's an interesting thing you bring up. The relationships between the major league club and the minor league clubs. They can transfer players up and down, basically without your will. How does the labor issues on the major league level trail back down to the minor league level? I could see that it would actually help your attendance if Major League Baseball had a lockout. I could also see this be tremendously disruptive to your operations. I mean, how did this play out?
In 1994, following the strike, that probably was the biggest year minor league baseball had in terms of attendance in many years. It doesn't, I don't know, however, I mean, having said that, it's probably not accurate to suggest that labor strife at the major league level benefits the minor leagues, because it results in budget cutting and a whole host of other things that would not inure to the benefit of the minor league system. So, we're not rooting. At least the minor league side of me is not rooting for strife at that level. Please.
Is there any concern at all that these disputes with the players and with the teams and what appears to be astronomical levels, at least to the public, is there any concern that this eventually harms the industry with the public?
Well, I think the NFL is facing that at a very acute level right now, right? You have players who make millions of dollars against owners who, if you can pay millions of dollars, must therefore be wealthier than millions of dollars. And I think that's a problem. I mean, I do think you know, for the average fan, you run into a dispute that, you know, pox on both your houses. So you're making a lot of money, you're making a lot of money. How is it that you guys can't figure this out?
But do you think of it in terms of that the fans will stop coming to the stadium because it reached that?
My sense, I mean, just looking at work stoppages over the years, is that there is some effect, but it is very limited. Baseball fans come back, football fans come back. There is an effect, but I would not think it would be substantial in the longer term sense.
From a labor point of view, where the major leagues are unionized and the minor leagues are not, what happens with the contract covering the major leaguer when he goes to the minor leagues? Is he still protected in some fashion by the major league contract?
If he is on a major league contract and assigned to AAA, he is still covered by the union. If he's still on a major league contract, if he's not.
And what does that do for him?
Well, I mean, it affects a whole range of circumstances in terms of disciplinary options that the baseball establishment has, in terms of the years to which he could be retained under contractual control by major league teams, in terms of compensation structure. I mean, there are a number of areas. Again, at the minor league level, the players, the average salary of minor league players who are not sent down to the minor leagues under a major league contract is probably something in the area of $1,500 to $2,000 a month.
But a lot of issues like that, I've kind of focused on the big picture issues for a CBA negotiation. The CBA itself is, you know, gets down to the level of the per diems and how many hotel rooms can you put a player in, and, you know, it really is that sort of specific, and those are the kind of things that will be negotiated for major league players.
Maybe it would help the question. Can you, one of you be happy to willing to explain the difference between the 25-player active roster and the 40-player major league roster?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's.
Could you stay close to the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I guess I would say it's pretty similar to what Marv just described. I mean, players, there's a uniform major league contract which has been collectively bargained, and which most of the guys in that situation will be signatories to, and that will basically provide, you know, their rights.
But if they're on the 40-player active, major league roster, even if they're not on the 25-man active roster for the players, they're still governed by the major league contract and the major league work rules. Yeah. Another thing that's very much in the news is the current ongoing financial problems plaguing the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Mets. We see in the case of the Dodgers a very active move by the current commissioner who's taking control over the Dodgers franchise. And we see a very different situation courtesy of the Madoff scandal playing out with the Mets. How did we get here? What do you think is going to happen, and how does it affect your organizations both at the major league and the minor league level?
Okay. Well, I would say if we follow the CBA negotiations in other leagues closely, we follow this a lot more closely because this is the commissioner, you know, potentially taking ownership away of a club from one, from one ownership group. You know, the commissioner has had a very good legacy of success. I think baseball has clearly rebounded under his tenure. He's established these protections for small markets. Baseball believes it has maybe along with the NFL, you know, the best record over the last 10 years of different winners at the major league level and different teams making playoffs. But the ownership situation has been very difficult for him. So just recently, you know, he's had to deal with the Cubs, the Rangers last year in a very ugly bankruptcy situation, and now, you know, the Mets and the Dodgers. So that's, you know, 4 of the marquee franchises in the game that have had these issues. The commissioner's powers under various major league documents are extremely broad. Best interests of baseball is kind of the phrase that is typically bandied about. And I think in this particular situation, you know, again, bad facts can make for a bad situation. And so if you followed the LA situation at all, there's been a lot of difficult divorce, a prenup situation that fell apart and that has resulted in joint ownership of the club by spouses that are divorcing. Situation in which there appear to be evidence of running the franchise for the interests of the individual, as opposed to, I think, the way the commissioner looks at it and the way most other owners look at it, which is that we are stewards of these ball clubs for our cities, and while we own them for the time periods that we own them, we're really running them for the, you know, for the benefit of future generations. And I think that will be one of the most interesting issues to watch in the Los Angeles situation, where Mr. McCord out there, who's the owner, claims to have a television deal negotiated that would put him into tip-top financial shape and allow him to pay off all of his obligations and go forward, and that he can't get the commissioner to sign off on that. And I suspect, and again, I don't know all the facts of it, that there is a real issue there as to what extent the current owner should be able to encumber an asset for many years into the future and sort of front load the value of that agreement and use it in the present day to satisfy obligations, which may include the divorce obligations. And so I think that's something the commissioner is looking at very, very carefully.
Just a couple of quick points. First, very briefly, with regard to the minor league system, the minor leagues actually are governed under a structure that is independent of Major League Baseball. It's governed by an organization called the National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues, which has 160 some odd teams as its members. And although it's connected contractually to Major League Baseball, it operates under a separate and distinct structure. The CEO is not called a commissioner, it's called a he's called a president, supported by a board of trustees, and he does have best interest of baseball type powers, although unlike the situation under the Major League agreement, his authority to implement any sort of disciplinary rules pursuant to that power is dependent on there being an actual definable violation of the rules. Now, with regard to the McCourt situation in the Dodgers, I suspect that situation may well play itself out in court in the coming months. One of the things that I have heard discussed, not by anybody representing McCourt or Major League Baseball, is that there may be some focus on the issue of whether there is a reasonable belief requirement that is implicit in the ability to exercise the best interest of baseball power. For example, did Commissioner Seeley, when he did what he did pursuant to exercise of that authority, have a reasonable belief, taking into account all the facts and circumstances, that that action was in fact required in the best interest of baseball?
And I just would add that the Mets situation, where obviously the owners of the Mets, you know, lost a significant amount of money in the Madoff investment. Actually, made and lost a significant amount of money, depending on how you look at it. And you know, that was posited by the Madoff trustee to be complicity, but obviously defended as simply an unknowing, you know, sort of an unsophisticated investment, innocent investment kind of defense. I think one of the things that's interesting is that these have come up at you know, at similar times, because if you're Mr. McCourt, one of the arguments you're going to make about the commissioner's action is, why are you being treated in this way? And, you know, for totally different reasons, but a franchise that is arguably equally troubled is being treated and allowed to sort of find an orderly path to find an investor, a minority investor that would kind of put them back on their feet. So I think, I don't know, but I think the Dodgers are likely to argue arbitrariness in the legal battles to come. Yep.
In regards to the Dodgers, I heard some discussion recently out in Los Angeles about the possibility of a community ownership along the lines of the Green Bay team. And then someone came on and said, well, that's prohibited under the antitrust and other agreements for baseball. Do you have any sense of whether that is true? I mean, would it be possible for a group to organize on a community basis?
I mean, just offhand, I think it would be possible, but I think it'd be more of the art of the practical. I don't think there'd be any legal reason. There's no reason under the baseball's antitrust exemption that I don't think it could do so. But I think that this commissioner and the other 29 teams would be unlikely to find that a satisfactory ownership structure.
And what's fascinating, when you look at the court cases on the scope of the antitrust exemption, the lower court cases split on whether it's the exemption is restricted to labor matters, or if it's a general antitrust exemption. And if it's only labor, then it won't affect ownership structure at all. So I'm curious, this, before we lose this, I want to, the other question is, you compete against minor league franchises in the Dodgers and Mets systems. Can you has it affected the way the minor league teams have played out? And can you imagine what it would be like being an owner of a minor league team for the Mets or the Dodgers?
Well, one of the things, one of the advantages of operating at the minor league level at different levels over a period of years is you develop a very good sense of the talent level that other organizations have coming through their system and the efficiency with which other major league teams operate their minor league systems. I can tell you specifically in the case of the Dodgers and the Mets, their current difficulties have had no effect. They've had weak minor league systems for years.
I'm sorry, please.
In the case of troubled franchises, does the commissioner consult with the owners of the other franchises in establishing the strategy for dealing with those, or is there a wall between the commissioner's office and other ownership in proceeding?
How would I feel about that question? It's a good question.
Ask another question.
In theory, consults.
It was broken completely.
This is my capital investment for the law school.
And this is why we need to support a fine alumni.
Does this table have a name on it?
Please, I'm sorry, you were saying it.
No, look, there is an executive council. There are, regular MLB ownership meetings. There just were some conducted in New York this week. But this is a very strong commissioner who has some clear views about, what he wants. And probably, the theory would be that there'd be a lot of consultation, but in practice there probably isn't as much. So, please.
There's probably an easy answer to this. But why isn't a lockout a breach of the player contracts?
Well, the player contracts are all, pursuant to the collective bargaining. So, I mean, the big battle in the NFL has been that the union decertifies, so all of the validity, we're starting over on everything, basically.
When they collectively bargain, they're allowed to, if you deadlock in good faith, locking out the players is one of the rights given under the Taft-Hartley Act.
Even if you have a player in the second year of a 5-year contract.
Yeah. Because the contractual rights are subsidiary to the larger collectively bargained agreement between management and labor. Yes?
For several years, the Oakland A's have been wanting to move to San Jose, and the Giants have blocked them, asserting their territorial rights. Could you comment on how that might play out? What are the factors that would decide that?
No.
One of the benefits of the antitrust exemption at both levels, particularly the minor league level, is the ability to allocate exclusive territories.
Can't the owners vote on changing territorial rights?
Yes, they could. I just say that's a very, it's a sensitive subject at MLB. Obviously, the A's have been working on it for a while. The Giants feel equally strongly about it. I don't really know where it will go because once you have the territory, your rights are very strong.
It's defined under the Major League Agreement, so it would take an amendment to the entire Major League Agreement to change territorial rights.
We have an example where they're studying it. We're still waiting for the results, and we have an example with the Washington Nationals having reached an accommodation with the Baltimore Orioles. So there's hope for a solution, I suppose. Anyway, please.
There's been talk about the Dodgers failing to meet their payroll in the middle of the season. Has that happened before, at least in modern times, and what happened then?
Yeah, I think a couple things. There has been talk about that. I think the commissioner has his representative in there, sort of looking at the books. I don't think the commissioner is going to allow anything to happen that will have a substantial day-to-day disruption. But as to whether or not Mr. McCord looks at bankruptcy or other options, I mean, given what happened in Texas last year, Texas was a very interesting situation because it appeared that there had been an orderly process for sale. The creditors were not pleased with the terms of the sale. The commissioner was pleased, but the creditors weren't, and that ended up going into bankruptcy. And it ended up that the commissioner's favored group was the winner, but at a substantially higher price. So the creditors, did pretty well there. So that's at least a suggestion that bankruptcy might not be the worst, path for an orderly resolution.
For whatever it's worth, the commissioner has said that he will not allow them not to make payroll. It's $8.25 million this month. Apparently, under the player contracts, if they fail to make payroll, every member of the Los Angeles Dodgers immediately becomes a free agent, and because it's a breach of the contract. And let's just say, I doubt the commissioner will allow that to occur. Now,
you may be standing in between the mail checks,
I suppose, depending on which part of the business you're in. But the other thing you mentioned earlier was digital rights, and this is obviously something that probably when all of us were in law school wasn't a focus at all, but has obviously become much more important. How has baseball approached it, and what do you see as the future in this potentially very important line of revenue?
Well, it is the future of not just baseball, but frankly every sport. Probably one of the reasons why I have the job that I have now, given my prior background, is that media rights are such a critical part of a team nowadays, and really sports teams are mini media companies. Depending on the degree to which they own their own rights and monetize them, it's the same concept. You're going to get a concentrated fan base. In fact, in some ways, on television shows with DVRs and other such things, there's been a real fragmentation of audiences. But when it comes to live sports viewing, it's relatively DVR-proof. I used to DVR Patriots games and come back after doing stuff with the kids, but then when some of the other team would start catching up, I had to know, so I wouldn't be able to wait anymore. And I think that's the experience a lot of people have, with DVR. So baseball has been way ahead of the curve, so to speak, on these issues, and in some ways maybe too far ahead of the curve. Back in 2000, when media rights, digital media rights were kind of, no one knew what that was. Some really smart people at Central Baseball aggregated through a grant of rights from all the 30 clubs to Major League Baseball Advanced Media, all digital rights, all forms of digital rights, anything that involves IP technology, digital streaming, wireless, that is now all owned by Central Baseball, and frankly in an IP license in perpetuity. We get a lot of things were done with not a lot of MLB owners really know what had happened. Now there have been some pluses to that. The pluses are that Major League Baseball's digital rights strategy is much more advanced than the other leagues. MLBAM is just as a technology infrastructure provider. If you look at bat, many of you might have some of the digital streaming technologies if you're out of market for the games on the computers. Just really high quality, excellent products to the iPhone, to the iPad. The difficulty is this: as the world has scrolled forward, and local television, which has been the hallmark of the Yankees, the Red Sox, and other teams, a very important feature of what it is that we own. And part of the deal had been that local television would not be cannibalized by these digital media rights that were being given to Central Baseball. Well, now the whole world has converged. So if you're sitting there and you have your iPad, and you walk out and you're watching the game on TV, but now you're going the other room and you want to keep it on your iPad, well, that iPad device is clearly substitutional with your your HD television experience. And the deal had been that those rights belong to the clubs. So I really think there's a problem here, that baseball faces. It's a good problem to have because they've been ahead of the curve on doing this stuff. But as an example, if you're out in the market trying to negotiate with ESPN for television rights contracts worth billions of dollars, ESPN is not going to let you keep digital rights in this Major League Baseball advanced media entity over here that's going to come over the top and compete with ESPN. So baseball's got a problem that it'll have to deal with, but it's a good problem because I think, if you check out our technology, we've been better than any of the other leagues.
One of the advantages of the internet, Marv, is micro-marketing, being able to, you don't have to be a big media company. One might think this would create, digital rights would create opportunities for minor league clubs to develop new revenue streams that didn't exist before.
In theory, yes. In reality, I'm still a skeptic. Minor League Baseball 2 years ago established a company called BIRCO, Baseball Internet Rights Company, under which the concept was similar to Major League Baseball Advanced Media, and in fact, it was set up in affiliation with MLBAM, under which minor league baseball would collectively market tickets, advertising, sponsorships, merchandise, and media and related rights. The reality, as I mentioned earlier, is television rights to baseball games are not have not been that valuable, and in my view, are not intrinsically that valuable, because people who want to watch baseball games want to watch the best baseball players. And the best baseball players, almost definitionally, are not playing at the minor league baseball. The minor league baseball experience is a very different experience. We sell a different product in reality at the minor league level. So in terms of the significance of digital rights and the, I don't think I'm violating any confidences when I say that the total revenue in 2010 for this company, which is the minor league version of BAM, was less than $1 million aggregate, all categories. That obviously will grow. It will grow to some degree of significance, but in terms of generating hundreds of millions or billions of dollars from television or other media rights, I don't see it.
In the last 4 minutes, anything goes. Please.
I had a follow-up question on the digital. What do you see for the cost to the fan to just have access to the game? Like here in Philly, if you want to watch on TV, you're going to have to get Comcast and pay for cable. Do you see there being competition between ways to access it, and are fans going to be paying more or less to watch the game on TV or whatever it is they're going to be watching it on?
It's a great question, and I think, everyone who has unique, valuable content has thought that, making yourself an over-the-top source would be an interesting approach to this issue. But I think the television industry is clearly moving in favor of what I'll call an authentication approach, which is that you have to verify that you're a Comcast subscriber. Provided you are, you'll be able to get it on any of your devices in any form. It's sort of like Slingbox, if you ever heard the commercials for Slingbox. I really believe cable providers, DirecTV, are embracing the Slingbox kind of idea that when you pay for your subscription, which will be more expensive, when you pay for your subscription, you should be able to get it on any device that you have anywhere, you know, in the country. So if you're traveling on the road in San Francisco, but you in fact order, you know, your regional sports network from Comcast here in Philadelphia, and you can log in and boom, you'll get it streamed to your iPad or whatever. That's, I believe, where the model is going. It's certainly where HBO and some of the other technologies like that are going.
In the back.
Yeah, I think a similar but somewhat different concept of the digital media rights is something that the Yankees and certainly the Red Sox are at the forefront of, and that's individualized television networks to create the games. The Yankees obviously have the YES network, the Red Sox have NESN. And that's not necessarily something that some of the smaller market teams, and even some of the bigger market teams can go to. Can you kind of comment on, you know, how that works within the overall major league system in terms of the economics, and certainly within your own teams as well?
Well, I mean, it's an important, you know, feature of the landscape of your local, you know, your local revenue base. And I think YES and NESN have been big assets for the Yankees and the Red Sox. But there are many teams in baseball that have them now. We're probably up to about 10 or 11. And I think you're likely to see more of them.
If you can make it quick, you get the last question.
Okay. It seems strange to me that baseball, I think, is the only sport where the two leagues are unbalanced. 14 teams in the American League and 16 in the National after Seller groups his own team. Is there any talk about balancing?
Yes. One of the things talked about in the current CBA, in addition to the addition of the wild card, is some of the guys woke up and realized they're in a 6-team division, and that's not as good as a 4-team division. So yes, that has been discussed.
Well, on that note, please join me in thanking Ed and Marv for